Boys birthed into the Spartan state were under scrutiny practically from the moment they were born. Not long after a woman gave birth to a boy, the infant was taken to a Garcia, a council of leading elder Spartans, where it was inspected like livestock. During this inspection, if the baby boy seemed sick, ill, or mentally or physically handicapped, the newborn was of no use to the Spartan army. While you've probably heard the myths that these discarded babies were thrown into the chasm or placed at the base of Mount Taygetus, they were most likely abandoned in the wilderness or nearby hill. The boys that passed the Garcia test were determined to be healthy and were returned to their families where they were groomed for toughness. These baby boys weren't bathed in water, they were bathed in tubs of wine. It was thought the wine would toughen them up. The belief was that the weaker children would have convulsions and die. These babies were also conditioned to not fear darkness or solitude, and when they cried or complained, their parents and caretakers ignored them. And all this lasted until they were 7 years old. Life was pretty rough for a Spartan boy the first 6 years of their lives, but it was the best years of their lives compared to how they were treated by the state, which owned them once they turned 7 years old. This was the age where the real military training began. At 7, the male child was enrolled in the agoge under the authority of the paetnomus, a Spartan term which translates to a boy herder. This boy herder was a magistrate charged with supervising the education of these young Spartan warriors. The agoge was split into 3 divisions: the pais, which were made up of boys aged 7 to 17, the paidskois, aged 17 to 19, and the heboi, aged 20 to 29. In the early paid stage, Spartan boys undergo an intense training regimen. Through this 10-year course, they were forged into fearless warriors, schooled in survival tactics like hand-to-hand combat, war strategizing, and hunting. Female Spartans weren't subjected to quite the same program, but they were trained in dance, gymnastics, and javelin throwing, so they would be strong, healthy mothers. After all, Spartan women were in charge of giving birth to the healthiest future warriors possible. Spartan soldiers abstained from heavy drinking because getting loaded would ruin their sole purpose in life, which was to serve the Spartan army. A wasted soldier was a useless soldier, so Spartan children were taught at an early age that heavy drinking was for slaves only. Every now and then, Spartan soldiers would force their slaves to get drunk to the point of belligerence. Once thoroughly blotto, the soldiers would parade the drunk slaves in front of the local children to let them see how ridiculous they looked. Drinking was a sign of weakness. Of course, soldiers were allowed a glass of wine with a meal, but it took discipline to keep up with the Spartan army, so the heavy drinkers probably didn't survive past their first few battles. Being a Spartan at 7 years old meant that you were scrutinized all the time. In regards to clothing, each future soldier was given 1 garment a year to wear, a red cloak. This was in part a way to prevent the children from gaining too much weight. If you got fat and couldn't figure out how to clothe yourself with what you were given, then the only way to fit in their garment was to exercise and eat less. And these boys didn't even get footwear until they graduated into official military service. The children were forced to walk barefoot, even through the snow. The idea was to harden the bottom of their feet so calluses would form so they can march for miles under any condition. The mess halls also